Welcome to everyone who is with us today and who might be watching this seminar later on. We are recording it, just that all of you know, and the seminar will be later on posted on our inspire.gallery website as well as on the website of PRIO. As you all know, Inspire Seminar Series, it's part of our Inspire project that studies inspiration of art, artists and activism in the context of war, conflict, displacement, exile. And the Inspire Seminar Series is a monthly online space for now, but we're hoping to do it hybrid and in person as of May. So hopefully those in Oslo or in Norway, not too far from Oslo, will be able to also join our discussions, monthly discussions at the Peace Research Institute directly. We'll keep you posted about that. So during the seminar series, we are exploring different topics: arts-based methods, collaborative methods, ethics of doing research with artists, but also art as transformation, engaged scholarship. And that all happens in the context of violent conflict, war, exile, but also resistance to violence. We're talking to artists and researchers, and today's seminar, we're going to have two invited speakers, Larissa Fuhrmann and Simone Pfeifer. I'll introduce them in a second. I wanted to also mention that I think we talked about the speakers just before today's seminar, and we agreed that we are living through extremely difficult times again, and reminding again issues related to violence, war and conflict that are now at the borders with Europe. But these issues, of course, are not, they've always been there, maybe not at the global scale recently, but they've been accompanying us for the past decades. And the two speakers that we are engaging with today, they've been also working with these issues for a long time, and we feel that it is also important to emphasize this momentum, emphasize issues that need to be addressed, emphasize issues that come to public attention in such a dramatic manner with the situation in Ukraine. And we're also hoping that this seminar and others will inspire you to continue pushing back and to continue addressing difficult issues and finding also inspiration in the incredible work that artists who are working from the context of war and exile bring to these discussions. So without further ado, I want to introduce our topic today. The topic is reCLAIM, Digital Curatorial Practices as Ethnographic Intervention. And as you all learn, reCLAIM is a curated web application that presents artists and their work opposing various forms of political violence. We have with us Simone Pfeifer, who is a social cultural anthropologist and focuses on visual, digital and media anthropology. After her postdoctoral position at the University of Mainz, she started a new research project on Muslim everyday life and digital media practices in the research training group anschließen-ausschließen at the University of Cologne. And in her work, she uses digital ethnography and curatorial strategies for the co-creation of knowledge. So that also, these methods, they speak very much to the Inspire project that we've been doing at the Peace Research Institute. So we're looking forward to Simone's inputs. And Simone is joined by Larissa-Diana Fuhrmann. I just want to say that we've known each other with Larissa since Sudan, so I'm really happy that we have an opportunity to now work together in this context and present Larissa's incredible work as a writer, researcher and curator who focuses on artistic appropriation practices in the context of political violence. She's currently pursuing her PhD on artistic contestations and the colonial perspectives on the violence of the so-called Islamic State. And before joining the University of Mainz, where she's doing her PhD, she worked in Sudan's cultural scene for the Goethe Institute. So now I hand over to the speakers just to let you know that the discussion is going to be after their presentation. So please write the questions in the chat. If we are not too many, probably for the discussion, we can also voice the questions. But for now, keep them in the chat. And Ida, who is assisting us today, she will then moderate the Q&A session. Thank you very much to the speakers, and I hand over to Larissa and Simone. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and thank you also for the kind introduction and for making the relation of our presentation to the current situation in Ukraine and the war that is going on there. So I think it's important to maybe link what we are talking about today also to what is going on there in some respect. And we are really happy to present our work with reCLAIM platform in the context of Inspire, because I think it speaks, or our project speaks in many ways to Inspire and what you are doing here in the context of Inspire. So the digital platform reCLAIM, we curated the platform with a group of artists who through their work relate and oppose various forms of political violence. And in the initial phase, as Kasia just said, we were looking into the question of how artists appropriate violent images and sounds by groups like the so-called Islamic State. And for that, we selected 10 artists and their artworks that spoke to the political violence in Iraq and Syria. And just to give you a little background, the whole project and this initial focus stems from the context of the platform that was developed in and funded in the project Jihadism on the Internet, Images and Videos, Their Appropriation and Dissemination at the Department of Anthropology and African Studies of the University of Mainz. So what we present here and the virtual collection is part of the research collaboration between Larissa and myself and our engagement with the artists and their work. And the work with the artists and reCLAIM, I have to say, is also central to Larissa's dissertation project. And the still preliminary title is The Art of Contesting Violent Images, Encountering Resistive Practices to the So-Called Islamic State and the War on Terror. So next slide, please. Before we delve a bit more into the platform and present you some of the artworks, we would like to elaborate a bit what we mean by curatorial practices and in what ways we see them as an ethnographic intervention. So for us, the platform is very much part of our research in very different ways. It is part of our methodology, it's part of our ethnography, and at the same time, it's a form of knowledge production. In our work with the artists, we often felt that in our position as researchers, it was rather difficult to access life worlds of the artists, but also grasp the complexities of the artworks. And like Raphael Schachter has outlined in his article on the curatorial methodology for our anthropology, we applied curatorial practices as a method to gain access and deepen our relationships with the artists, and even more to better understand particular artistic practices. And even before the pandemic, it was our aim to transfer the curatorial practices to the digital, to be able to include and bring together artists that work on the specific themes located in very different geographical areas. And we also developed a particular approach to the digital that was also part of our research questions and the practices we explored, the digital practices of appropriating violent images. And it turned out that our work also served as a form of knowledge projection, and one might even relating to Jennifer Dagger's notion and sense here to the co-creation of knowledge. So through the close collaboration with selected artists, we were able to engage in new kinds of knowledge production and to a lesser degree also in knowledge dissemination. And this included to bring the different artists and their work in conversation with each other. So these different kinds of conversations between the artists, between us and the artists, of course, also meant to mediate between different and very diverse positionalities of researchers, filmmakers, artists, critics, and of course different other intersectional and changing positionalities relating to gender, race, and to a lesser degree also to class and ableism. And one of these multiple actors in our work was also the company Fluxguide, who helped us to design the platform. And you can see in the image here a first prototype of the platform that we developed and designed together with Fluxguide. So next slide, please. All these different kinds of strands developed into what you can get a first glimpse in now on the platform reCLAIM. And once you access the platform, the first screen presents all artworks displayed with one image in a kind of Petersburg hanging, and it will shuffle each time you enter or re-enter the link and enter the site or other images of artworks. So all the time, the artworks will be featured in different ways. There are two more sections that Larissa will go into detail in a minute. I think it's important to point out here that users or visitors of the site can display and curate the artworks according to their interest through selecting the various categories in the navigation. And this will show only those artworks that relate to the category. And this is a possibility for us on the platform to make relations between the artworks visible. And the categories are not hierarchical, rather intuitive, and they're still work in progress. They will grow throughout the existence of the platform. And we will in the future also insert short descriptions to each category. So let's now show you a bit more of the platform and the three main sections. And I hand over to Larissa, and she will tell you a bit more about the artists and the artworks.
Yeah, thank you so much for this, Simone. So let me tell you something about the artworks we selected and how we present them on the digital creation platform. We were in close exchange with the artists to decide which artworks to use and how to contextualize them with text and quotes. And what the artworks that have been added so far have in common is that they contest the existence of the so-called Islamic State, but simultaneously, but in varying degrees, they are challenging Eurocentric perspectives through decolonial practices. And you can see, as Simone pointed out, we use the so-called Petersburger hanging as a way to use the space most effectively and show the relations between the works, but through the categories, the user is in charge of the arrangement of the work. And with each click, the selection changes and the user gets to experience how we make connections between the works visible. And there's a wide range of genres, such as sculptural works, installations, photo collages, paintings, cartoons, and videos that we included. We had to decide how to translate and represent, for example, the film Bottle Songs, which consists of 4 parts and was created by Kevin Billy and Chloé Galibert-Lenné. There are 2 video essayists who have collaborated on this series for years, and we've also been in touch with them since the beginning of our work. And another question was, how could we show these works in a way to translate the topics, but also get the user interested in the works and show them in a digital space where they're usually showed in an installation in in an analog space, which gives a different experience for the viewers. And also, we had to see the cartoons by Sudanese artist Khaled Al-Bey. We asked ourselves, should we insert each one of his pieces as one artwork, or should we use a selection of cartoons as one piece next to his filmic work? And the artworks are always accompanied by short text. And these texts describe them, and we also have a quote by the respective artist to further give the audience an insight into the work and why we've chosen it for our platform. And to let the artist's views be visible on the platform next to their work was very important for us to have their voice there as well, together with our voice. And they partly stem from interviews we had with them and partly from other sources. And now next slide, please. So I'll tell you a bit more on the artists and the collaborations we wanted to foster. And one of the central questions for us was like, what does collaboration and what does co-curation or co-creation actually mean? And how can we eliminate the distance and often the hierarchy between the researchers and their collaborators, but also the curators and the artists? And some of the artists we knew before the setup of the platform, others we chose specifically for it. So we approached them in the context of reCLAIM for the first time. Consequently, there is a varying degree of collaboration and co-creation. Some of the artists, we continued regular conversations in the form of interviews, but also other forms of discussion to exchange our thoughts and work progresses. And that was very productive and became very visible in our work as well as in the work of the artists. We discussed terms to use for the work, such as artivism, that were later picked up by the artists, and they would discuss them in their ways. And we wanted to see how useful these different terms are in our respective contexts. And we were also looking for other opportunities to collaborate with the artists outside of the platform itself. So to give an example of one of the more intense co-creations in the context between the artists and us, Khaled Al-Bey and me, we worked together with 30 other artists and published an art book together. And so we always try to find ways of working together and finding opportunities to show how artists and researchers can connect their work and co-create. And in the we'll also show how in form of events we fostered our relationships. And talking about the events we organized, we'll give you further insight in the discussions we'll have. And in the discussion, we'll have the chance to pick up this aspect of our work. Again, if you have any questions, post them in the chat, please, and we'll get back to them. And another point was also a question we asked ourselves, how to differentiate the different voices and authors of the text on the platform. And as you can see, we've tried to use graphic elements. So for instance, the quotes are always on top, and then below the quotes, you can find them not in italic, the text, and they're outwards. So there's different degrees of differentiating the text. And then please to the next slide, where I hand over to Simone again. Or, oh yeah, sorry. First, I'll talk about the news and about page, and then I'll hand over to Simone to talk about one of the events. So to give visiting users a better understanding of the context the website was developed in and our personal backgrounds as research, integrated an about and news page, the very simple menu of the website as well. And the page is not completely static, but is updated regularly to inform visitors on our ongoing activities through text, but also hyperlinks. And it gives users a better understanding of the terms we use, the choice of artists and artworks, but also offers them deeper insights into our scientific approach and the use of the works. Channel, which you can see right here, is called reCLAIM, and it follows a very similar aesthetic and structure like the website. So Instagram for us seemed to be the best choice from different social media platforms that exist, and 90% of the artists we work with have active profiles there. We can write longer texts in order to introduce our understanding of artwork or like contextualize the works. And while the focus is set on the visuals, we can add sufficiently long, not just text, but also integrate hashtags and use other affordances of the website, of the social platform. And the page to an additional offers a second curatorial space that allows us to do live streams in the future and utilize the different affordances of the page, like Reels. The page also enables us to have another communication channel with the artists, and this gives us regular updates on their ongoing work, as well as vice versa. And now I'd like to hand over to Simone for the next slide.
As Larissa already mentioned, part of our collaboration is also to bring together different perspectives and bring together the artists through shared events. And our platform was officially launched on 27th of February last year with an event titled Resisting ISIS, Art Against Political Violence, which was part of an accompanying program of the special exhibition Resist, the Art of Resistance at Cologne's Rautenstrauch-Jost Museum. And initially we really would have loved to have a hybrid event where we get together with the artists, but we unfortunately had to adapt to the COVID-19 pandemic measures, and we're only able to set up a Zoom event, which was nevertheless really wonderful occasion to bring together works of the artists Khaled Albey, Morashin Alayari, Kevin Billy, and Chloé Galibert-Lenné. And after screening the video essay series Bottled Songs by Kevin Billy and Chloé Galibert-Lenné, and 2 artist talks by Khaled Albey and Morashin Alayari, we discussed and analyzed how the so-called Islamic State appropriates symbols, narratives, identities, and aesthetics, and how artists reappropriate and recontextualize them subsequently. And during the discussion, we were spontaneously joined by Simon Menner, another artist from the platform, who provoked a rather interesting exchange through his intervention and reference to his personality as a white male artist. And I would like, or we would like to show you a little bit, a small snippet from that event. So please start the video.
That I think beheaded a soldier, and the whole thing was filmed and from a bus or something. And then the guys came onto the bus and started talking to the person who's filming. And they said something about Sharia law, and these guys are soldiers and something, you know? And he literally was like bloody, right? But he was talking about this, very, very cold manner, right? And so the first time the video was shown and it was uploaded to YouTube, you could hear the whole thing. I tried to find that video again or listen to it when it came to the news, and all the news was showing was not when he was talking, it was showing the beheading. It was showing the head, the cutting, but not what he said. I mean, the guy killed the guy for you to listen to him, and you're still not listening.
But
right?
propaganda dies from ignorance. So if you ignore propaganda, it dies. It disappears. The same.
That's why they kicked Trump off Twitter after 4 years, right? Excellent, great. But we had to listen to him for 4 years, and you know it was you know he could, like, people stormed the Capitol, right? So I don't know, man. I just think that who has who says who censors who. That's what I'm saying. And that's basically what I was saying at the beginning. A lot of these guys don't have a voice, right? They know cinema. They know, I just think if they were heard even before all of this, this wouldn't have happened, right?
But if I walk up and down the streets of Berlin, most people have no voice either. So it's just, oh no, now they start killing people and torturing people. Now we
that's
have
not
to
what I
listen.
said. That's not what I said.
I mean, yeah, but most people don't have a voice.
But it gets
we
to
don't
that.
have
But
a
it's,
voice.
Well, you're.
I mean, depends what kind of people we're talking about. I mean, I think it's the context of that. This conversation is like really important when you say like most people don't have a voice. I mean, we can bring in conversations around gender, around race, around like what kind of like access we get because of certain privileges with class. So that's, I mean, I feel like that's a general statement that is problematic, because it's always about that context of who we're talking about. I mean, most people are not voiceless. There are people who are, actually, there's like a quote that I really like, which is that there's not such thing as voiceless. There is only people who other people choose not to hear, right?
So this was a very intense discussion that still resonates with us today. And with this very important statement by Marcin in the end, with a plea to contextualize, and her quote, "Most people are not voiceless. There is no such thing as voicelessness. There's only people who other people choose not to hear." And I think here the relation of violence and its audiovisual and digital mediations of what is mediated and what is left out comes out in this small piece very much. And it very much speaks to the artistic interventions as well as to our work to make visible and heard dimensions that might otherwise be not part of the dominant discourse. And I just want to point to two dimensions here. The first is that our engagement as researchers or curators, as well as the artists in our work, we aim to make visible and illuminate different perspectives and social and historical complexities of the political violence of groups such as the so-called Islamic State and the military interventions in Syria and Iraq. And the second is, and this also for the artists as well as for us, is to critically reflect on our positions as researchers and curators and the academic apparatus our work is set in, and to reflect on the notions of collaboration and intervention, not only between us and the artists, but also between the artists we bring together through the platform and our events. And for some participants, the experience was an important point for reflection and intensified our following collaborations. And Larissa will briefly mention one follow-up event in Mannheim in the next slide, please.
In London.
Yeah, thank you. So we want to show you another excerpt from an artist talk we had at the Kunsthalle Mannheim, and that was in October last year. It was titled Art and Political Violence, and was accompanying the exhibition Mind Bombs, Visual Cultures of Political Violence. And the participants were Marcin Alayari, Khaled Albey, Johan Grimonskres, and Wendy Shaw, and it was moderated by and Kevin B. Lee, and it was moderated by curator Sebastian Baden and myself, who was also co-curator of the exhibition. It was organized in the context of the symposium Notions of Jihad Reconsidered, Perspectives on Media, Materiality and Political Violence by the research group in Mainz that Simone mentioned at the beginning that the two of us were working in at the time. And you'll hear Kevin B. Lee speaking, and he'll give you an insight into his work and also our collaboration with him. The question that I asked him was about terms we use in our daily practices, he uses in his daily practices in the field of political violence, and which role the positioning of actors play and how we can reflect on it with specific focus on ethical considerations. So yeah, you can play the video. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I can kind of think to a specific instance. I mean, there have been many instances to kind of have occasion to reflect on one's own position and what one takes for granted. That, yeah, to even deal with this subject matter that yeah, I think what made me ask you and also Simona, and the two of you have written very well on this topic of what you call floating signifiers, which I guess is a term from Lacanian psychology, about yeah, how a term is perceived given different contexts. You know, the two of us, Chloe and I, have endeavored to you know, make sense of this so-called mediatic states of terror as a way, first of all, of making sense of these experiences ourselves, and then kind of forming a kind of mutual understanding between each other. I mean, this is very delicate, sensitive, kind of personal sense-making process, and at the same time, it's kind of strange that it's so exposed to this kind of public venue, and that's almost a, I don't know, in some ways, an irresolvable kind of condition that also kind of reflects the way the internet works. I mean, the internet, on the one hand, feels so kind of personal and intimate and empowering, and at the same time, it's so vulnerable. Like, and that's really what this project made me realize and appreciate, because up to this point, I had very much been kind of a techno-utopianist when it came to using personal technologies in the desktop as a means of you know, telling stories with limited resources and accessing information that would otherwise be unavailable to me. But then with this particular project, it just exposed so many yeah, kind of points of vulnerability, I guess, or compromise in terms of well, there are so many ways of looking at the situation of quote unquote terrorism that have been actually very well expressed. I'm very much, I really learned a lot just listening to you in the last half hour. That, you know, I wish I had all of this knowledge when I started the project, but you know, one can't turn back time, and I think to have learned as much as I have through this, I guess is good. But yeah, I don't know if I'm really getting to a point, but it's really just yeah, I guess that in a way the process of making this project was a way of realizing the limitations of this mythology of technological empowerment, and that there needs to, that we've kind of come upon new ways of thinking about how knowledge is produced and how knowledge is accessed, and that it's as much upon building certain social relationships that allow one to extend beyond one's own frame of knowing.
Yeah, so again, in this excerpt, you can see the focus we set in our conversations, and you can see how we influence each other in our work through the collaboration with Kevin and his colleague Chloe. We've been working since 2007, and it's an ongoing collaboration. Simona will also point out something in the conclusion about this. And we also wanted to point out that if you want to see the exhibition and the works of these particular artists that also Kevin was talking about now, you can go to the website of the Kunsthalle Mannheim for a virtual tour where you can see the works, and also on the Instagram page from reCLAIM that we mentioned earlier, you will also be able to see more excerpts from this conversation. And now to the next slide. Thank you.
So what remains is to sum up and conclude, and this is difficult because our collaborations are still ongoing. And so, for example, Kevin invited us and recorded a conversation with us for his new film. There are still events accompanying the exhibition in Mannheim, and Larissa and Khalid are continuing their work on a second art book together with artists from Sudan. So for us, this is an open process that we try to continue in the various settings we are working in. And the different kinds of curatorial practices on the platform, the events, but also the exhibition in Mannheim, they all presented us with different modalities of collaboration and engagement, also in different hierarchical settings, contexts, and under very varying terms to develop our relationships. And we see these engagements as ethnographic intervention and a continuous process of our work. So to bring together the different positionalities, perspectives, and in the online as well as in the offline context. So during our activities, we took note on the benefits and the challenges we faced concerning our simultaneous positionalities as researchers, curators, but also our political positionalities. And sometimes it became difficult to fill out all roles equally and convey to the people we worked with our roles, particularly when you only meet people online in the first instance. And just as our work is ongoing, we want to point to some future plans that we want to extend the platform and add new cluster topics there. Continuing our past collaborations and also expanding our new terrain that is linked to artists relating to political violence in their work. And hopefully we will have the opportunity to continue our explorations in the different formats that we mentioned here. And I think it's good to come to an end here to leave some room for some questions as well. Thank you very much. And on the next slide, you see also the references that we included in the beginning. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Larissa and Simone. So if anyone have any questions, just write them in the chat. And since we're not that many people, Toto can unmute you and you can also say it out loud and we can have a discussion and a conversation.
Okay, well, you might think about a possible question. I will just quickly type into the chat some links of the exhibition Mind Bombs and also the Instagram channel that we use for the platform.
Maybe I start. I take the privileged position that I have access to the mic and to the video. Thank you so much, Simone and Larissa. This is a really fascinating project, and I think this speaks so much to what we are trying to do in Inspire also. But I think we are very much in the process in many ways. So it's not, our platform is not as developed as yours in a sense of this kind of interactive aspect, because this is what I hear, that you also have the interactive aspect of the platform. So my questions, I think I have two questions. One is, in a sense, we kind of heard your perspective as researchers, curators, and also activists, because I think this is how you define yourselves on this project. And I wonder if you have some feedback from the artists and maybe other curators who worked with you, how they experience this process. I think for me, that's an interesting question always when we talk about this kind of collaborations and co-creations, and from whose perspective we are also speaking about these processes. So that's one question. And second question would be about the life of the platform, because this was also something that we asked ourselves when we were creating the Inspire platform. Given the fact that this digital space is of course limited to certain life of the money that finances the platform. So how does this work with you? Is this a limited collaboration, or how do you plan on doing it for longer? Yeah, so maybe I start with two questions, and I see Sarah is also there, who is the coordinator of our platform. So I'm sure she has many different questions also about that. So maybe, I don't know, Sarah, maybe you also want to come in, and then we ask a few questions to let you think about issues.
Yeah, I can also add in. I also just want to say thank you. Very, very interesting presentation and really interesting work you're doing. And like Kasia said, I also like there's so many overlapping synergies here, of what we're doing in the Inspire project and what the work you have already done. And one of the things I got curious about is this: you said you have this platform, like you can communicate, like you've created a space where you communicate directly with the artists, so on your platform. And I was just wondering, how does this function? So is there a lot of activity there? You know, does it kind of function as a chat forum, or do people post ideas, or, you know, and how frequent is the interaction from the artists? Is it kind of something that you guys are driving, or does it happen naturally?
Maybe I'll start with an answer, and then Simone can also add to it. Thank you so much, both of you, for the questions and for the very kind words on our work. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you. So first of all, let me start with the last question, with the communication aspect. So we're not using the website itself as a communication channel. There's no like login or chat function or anything. There you can only see kind of our communication through the quotes. You can kind of get an insight into the communication we have with the artists through that. But we use Instagram as a way to communicate directly with the artist, because that's a channel that is already there. And hence we used a tool to embed the Instagram channel on our About and News site. So you can see it there, it's visible, but we use Instagram itself as a channel to communicate. Besides obviously email, telephone, like in all the other platforms we can use, but Instagram is one of the main channels we use. And then concerning the co-creation and the view of the artist and other co-creators, that's a question you can ask us, but it's so hard to answer it, because like the artists and curators should actually answer how they experience the collaboration. But I think this is exactly why we're holding these public discussions, because this is where the artists and other people we collaborate with can comment on that, can give you an insight on that. And this is also always a moment for us where we can reflect on the way we're collaborating. What is useful, what is not useful, what is being criticized. And from there, we try and develop our modes of collaboration and the way we practice our work.
And maybe
and I think also in the second video, sorry, yeah, please go and add.
No, sorry, Larissa, I thought you were finished. Come.
I just wanted to say in the second video that you saw in Mannheim, Kevin was very much speaking about exactly that, the way we're holding conversations, the way we choose certain terms, and the way we discuss choosing certain terms with him, and how this influenced him and his thoughts on positioning in terms they've been using for a while. And we all know that something we might have created 3 years ago, we might see it very differently nowadays. And this is how we can manage to kind of come to a way of like collaborating in the future, creating, co-creating in the future, and not making the same mistakes that we maybe made 3 years ago, and like learn from each other and exchange these experiences. And I think that's very, very valuable for us in the smaller circle, but also through these public discussions we're holding for a bigger circle of people who can then like use this information.
Yeah, and I think just to add that kind of with each artist or collaborator, it's very different. So for some, like Kevin, these conversations with us, but also with the other artists, were really stimulating. And at least that what I got from him as a feedback was that he was really profiting from these kind of collaborations. And for example, he also invited Mauricine after the launch event for another event that he held in Stuttgart, and before they hadn't been in touch, so we could also like get the artists together in different contexts. And so, but of course it's difficult to ask us what the response is, because usually it was rather positive, but in some instances, of course, there's also for us a steep learning curve that we get critical feedback, and we try to adapt our work as well. For example, we would not call the launch event Resisting ISIS now, because this is only focusing on one kind of political violence and leaving out the context of the violence, the context the violence takes place in. So that's kind of maybe just briefly adding to what Larissa answered. And I think there was another question on the life of the platform and the long-term prospects for the platform. And this is actually really difficult. I mean, we had this initial funding and are still funded by a research project. And at the moment, we are in the process of looking for additional funding. So once the research project ends, we will still have the possibility to continue the platform and work with it as well. I mean, it can stand as it is, but as you know, if you don't have something new or events attached to it, it will just like, not be visited and not be a lived platform, but like an archive of our work. So yes, that's kind of something that is really important to us as well, to make our work last longer than the project funding.
And do you then link this platform also to other, because in a sense, this can be linked to other projects that you continue in the future. So is there also that possibility that can be, because that's another way of kind of prolonging the life, of course, if you get the funding. But that would mean maybe partially either continuing this open process. I like this idea of the open process. I think this is what we're working with quite a lot in our project as well. I think for us, it's very much of a learning experience of how to do it. We've tried to have these conversations with artists, but I have to say that it's not always, as Sarah already said, it's not always easy because it's, the communication kind of comes more from our side, or the encouragement comes more from our side. So if we are involved and we continue these discussions, then they happen, and then we take the feedback on board. But it is us as researchers, primarily as researchers, and then curators of this Inspire website that drive the process. So that, there is that tension in this collaborative processes online, and I think that also has to do with the fact that for us it is linked to an academic project, right? So there's also that academic output that maybe for artists that not necessarily what's their priority is in these conversations. So I don't know if you have some insights on this, or Sarah, also you might have some other thoughts on these aspects, because I mean we've talked about it a lot, and we are of course in the conversations, and I know that some of the artists were also with us in the discussion, so maybe they also want to add something from their perspective.
I can quickly try and give an answer to this, or give some input. I think there's always the question of how much someone benefits from a collaboration, right? How much do the 2 sides or 3 sides, or how many sides there are benefit from it? And I think you pointed that out as well. And I think for me and my research for the PhD, it was very important to have very intense conversations with the artists in order to understand how they work, why they work, where they work, and so on. And having the opportunity to co-curate a bigger exhibition in a museum in Germany gave me the chance to invite them to be part of this event, and then in this context again have more intense conversations with them about their works. Which ones will we choose? How will we show them? How will we contextualize the work? How can they be included through performances or artist talks? And like this, linking it through their daily practices, not just my daily practices as a researcher and having interviews with them, but their daily practices as finding spaces to exhibit their works and finding ways to like communicate what is behind their works to a bigger audience. So I think that was a way that made it much more interesting for some of the artists, because it was not just about conversations and about academic output, as you said, but it was also reaching another audience outside this academic bubble, let's say, and that can also then connect to their works. And that is also something that Simone and me want to achieve. We don't want to only talk, like, not as if that is like limiting, but beyond the researchers that we're interacting with, which is so important, we also want to reach another audience that maybe works with different vocabulary, works with different interests, works with different goals. And that was something that was very important to us and we could achieve through these collaborations with museums and other spaces.
Thank you for the comment, Liv. I think that's really interesting and important that to point to that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's not a question, but it's a comment in the chat. So I don't know, Tata, if you want to unmute Liv. And
yes,
she can
maybe it's
say some.
muted. She wants to turn on her camera. Mike, she can do that.
Hi. Yeah, I can recognize myself in what Larissa-Diana was mentioning about who is driving these conversations and dialogues, and of course in some ways it has to be the researchers and the curators, because you are more trained in putting your work into words, and artists often need to learn this. So to be part of these seminars is a good tool and an important tool. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's also that we should take into account the asymmetries. Usually, the artists in these projects, they're not funded with a position in the project, but they, an artwork is rarely funded in a way that is sustainable. So I think it's kind of these asymmetries are really important in our relations as well. And not only in terms of funding, but this is kind of a major issue that we should in the future make sure that these kind of research projects include employment for artists as well, for example. But of course, that's kind of difficult to achieve. And maybe another minor point is that I think that we should also try to engage more in that's what we're partly trying to do in Instagram, not only converse in words or talk about the artworks with words in our academic language. I think Larissa pointed that out, but also try to engage in different audiovisual ways. And I think Instagram is a great platform to do that, because most artists present their work there in visual or audiovisual terms. And it's easier there to just a story or a post and engage with the post in different ways. So I think that's kind of another way for us to do that.
Sounds lovely.
I think it would
Sorry.
Thank you so much. Sorry. I just wanted to say, I think it could also be an option. Like, if that would exist, I would have taken the option of doing my PhD in collaboration with an artist. Why should I only benefit from this at the end? I would love to share this because it's the journey we take together, obviously in very different degrees and so on. But I'd love to do this together with for instance, Khaled Al-Bey, that I work with the most, because I think he deserves a PhD as much as I do at the end of all of this. And so I think it is very difficult, but I think it's hard to push certain boundaries in order to maybe change the system and the way it is right now in order to make collaborations more possible and more interesting for people, and to get out of this one way kind of version of how to do academic work. Just an idea, but I think like if a lot of people believe in it, it can be done.
Yes, absolutely. I think Larissa, you're pointing to key issues, and I think this is also what we've been struggling with in the Inspire project, and the fact that academic funding is limited to those who do apparently academic work, i.e. researchers, and then there is cultural funding. Sarah knows this so well, so I'm looking at you because we've been trying to bridge these gaps. And then the cultural funding is only for so-called cultural activities. So it's very difficult to maneuver these different spaces. And at the same time, I think there's also some, I would say, a bit of a hypocritical take in academia where we talk about, interdisciplinarity and doing arts-based research and using all this artistic and cultural language that at the end of the day does not really translate to opening more spaces for people who do work in this collaborative manner. Academia, I think, stays still very much focused on, on the academic and the personal and the ego and all the requirements that are there to drive academia. Yeah, I see Simone is also nodding from the anthropological perspective, right? It's quite disturbing if we think about this. All right, I think we can, and I just want to mention, because that actually links to to a project that we're also developing within the Inspire research project more broadly, and that is really just we're still developing it, so it's on our website, but it's not. We haven't started the applications process for the project, but I'm going to launch it now because I think it shows what Larissa, you were talking, and Simone, you were talking about, but also Liv, your contribution to this discussion. So we are launching an Inspire Art Award that will be really dedicated within the Inspire Research Project to the artists who work on issues related to what we are working on in the research project. But it will be a monetary award. Hopefully we're trying to get some residencies for artists as well. So we're trying to do a completely different work, shaping these discussions differently. And I think we should thank PRIO for the fact that they are welcoming this. They are opening the space, and we can do it with their institutional support. So please spread the word and look on our website for the developments. We're hoping to launch it in June. And also to the artists that that might be interested in applying for this award and doing that process. I think that opens up a possibility for those who are who maybe haven't had these possibilities yet. But now it's time to close the seminar. I want to thank both of you, Simone and Larissa, for really sharing this wonderful, engaging and project, and an important project in the way you kind of engage with these issues critically and think from so many different perspectives. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for everybody attending. Just to remind you, the conversation was recorded, so you can also then later on share it from our Inspire website with your colleagues who maybe would be interested to listen to it. And we're going to see each other this time in 2 weeks' time. We're kind of catching up with the fact that we missed so many months of not seeing each other. So the next Inspire seminar will be on the 30th of March, Wednesday, and it's a slightly different time this time. So it's from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Oslo or Central European time online. And this is because our speaker is located in Canada, Louise Klassen. She's going to be talking about research and creation, insights of ethical demand models of conduct and practice. So please join us for this discussion. Thank you so much to the speakers and to the audience, to the participants, and we look forward to continuing the conversations.
Thank you so much for having us, and thanks to the audience. Thanks a lot. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you so much. All the best.
Bye.
Bye.